The Young and the Restless spoilers shock next 2 weeks. Spoilers May 26 to June 6, 2025. Phyllis Summers was not the kind of woman used to being ignored, especially not by elusive billionaires with names like Aristotle Dumas. So when her carefully coordinated, personally delivered phone call was rebuffed with nothing more than a curt message from his assistant, "Mr. Dumas is unavailable," she was stunned into a silence that lasted precisely 34 seconds. That was, after all, the limit of her patience when something didn't go her way. Her red-painted nails drummed furiously on the marble counter of the Grand Phoenix bar as she muttered, half to herself and half to the startled bartender, "Unavailable? Who does he think he is? The Pope?" What she really couldn't wrap her head around was why. Why now? Why her? She'd heard the stories. Aristotle Dumas was a ghost, a shadow in billion-dollar boardrooms, a man whose power was felt but rarely seen. But Phyllis Summers wasn't just anyone. She wasn't some underqualified secretary begging for a meeting. She was a businesswoman, a powerhouse, a survivor. And most importantly, she had something he needed. Or at least, she thought she did. That made the rejection all the more personal. Which is why when she spotted Amanda Sinclair, suitcase in tow, striding confidently through the Grand Phoenix lobby, Phyllis's jaw practically hit the floor. "Amanda?" she gasped, hurrying across the polished floor in 4-inch heels that clacked with righteous indignation. "What are you doing here?" Amanda's face barely registered surprise. "I could ask you the same thing. But you," Phyllis's words stumbled over themselves. "You're back in Genoa City? And you didn't tell me?" Amanda arched a brow with that classic, elegant restraint only a lawyer of her caliber could maintain. "I didn't think I had to submit a re-entry form to the Grand Phoenix concierge desk." "Oh, cute," Phyllis said through a tight smile. "Don't think that sarcasm is going to distract me. Why are you here?" Amanda hesitated for just a moment, just long enough for Phyllis to smell blood in the water. "Wait a minute," she said slowly, her eyes narrowing with instinctual accuracy. "You're not just here. You're working." Then it clicked. Her eyes widened. "You're here for him, aren't you?" Amanda gave her a careful, lawyerly nod. "Yes. I'm Aristotle Dumas's legal representative." Silence fell for a full 3 seconds. "And then, what?" Phyllis practically shrieked. "You're working for him? The guy who just refused to take my call? The same guy I've been trying to reach for days? You're telling me that you're, what, his mouthpiece now?" Amanda crossed her arms and exhaled. "It's not personal." "Not personal?" Phyllis laughed, a high-pitched, near-hysterical laugh. "Oh, honey, everything is personal. Especially when it involves me. You were supposed to be my friend. And now you're what, siding with the guy who's stonewalling me?" "I'm his lawyer, Phyllis. Not his sidekick, not his girlfriend, and definitely not his life coach. My job is to represent his interests." Phyllis stared at her, utterly scandalized. "And what about my interests? I thought that was a full-time job." Amanda didn't flinch. "It used to be. But I have new priorities now." "Traitor," Phyllis declared dramatically, gesturing wildly. "This is betrayal. This is treason. This is emotional abandonment and career sabotage all rolled into one. Hold my purse while I process this." Amanda didn't dignify it with a response. She simply walked past her toward the elevator, leaving Phyllis to fume in the lobby like a woman denied her rightful crown. But Phyllis wasn't going to let this go. No one put Phyllis Summers on hold. Especially not someone with the audacity to be rich and reclusive and represented by one of her closest friends. While Phyllis fumed upstairs, across town at Chancellor Winters, another storm was brewing, this one under the unlikely banner of Billy Abbott and Sally Spectra. To the casual observer, Sally's current involvement with Billy might have seemed like a spontaneous affair born of proximity and rebound chemistry. But beneath the red lips and charming smiles lay a volatile cocktail of chaos and attraction that neither of them fully understood. Sally had been through the emotional ringer. She wasn't looking for drama, if anything, she was running from it. Which made her new relationship with Billy all the more dangerous. Because he wasn't done playing with fire. "I've got it under control," Billy said for the 5th time that morning, his hand brushing hers across the boardroom table. "You said that yesterday," Sally replied coolly. "And the day before. And the day before that." He smiled that maddening Abbott grin. "And was I wrong? Do you really want me to answer that?" But Billy wasn't fazed. If anything, her resistance seemed to amuse him. "Look, I know this Victor thing makes you nervous," she cut in. "You're challenging Victor Newman. The man who chews up CEOs and spits them out into lawsuits." "I'm not challenging him," Billy said, leaning in. "I'm outsmarting him." Sally rolled her eyes. Famous last words. But Billy was in deep. He'd been part of Victor's world long enough to know how the man moved, quietly, methodically, like a lion waiting for weakness. And he believed that weakness was coming. The whispers around town, the secrecy, the sudden movements in Jabot stock, something was happening behind closed doors. Billy wanted to be the one to shine the light, to pull the strings first. Sally, for all her instincts, wasn't sure if she was falling for a genius, or boarding a sinking ship. And in the distance, hidden in boardrooms and private lounges, Victor Newman watched it all unfold with surgical precision. He was aware of Amanda's allegiance, of Michael's wavering loyalty, of Billy's ambitions and Phyllis's fury. The pieces were on the board, and he had seen this game before. It was only a matter of time before someone blinked, or bled. Because in his world, trust was a currency. And betrayal, well, that came with interest. Would you like the next chapter to follow Amanda's inner conflict between Phyllis and Dumas? Or Sally confronting Billy about what he's truly hiding from her? Or Victor personally paying Michael a visit after learning about his marital crisis? Absolutely. Here is a full, intricately layered, soap opera-style narrative that ties all your plot threads together. Sally's sharp instincts, Holden's secret about Audra, Diane and Jack's strategic alliance, and the looming question of Adam and Nate's loyalty. The story is written continuously, logically, and with the high emotional and dramatic stakes characteristic of the young and the restless. Let's dive into the next sweeping chapter of betrayal, ambition, and dangerous alliances. Sally Spectra had seen men like Billy Abbott before. Charismatic. Reckless. Smiling with one hand extended while the other tucked a grenade behind their back. She danced in the fire of manipulation and charm, and she bore the scars of it in the quiet spaces between her words, in the way her eyes flicked over every detail twice, and in the silences she learned to listen to more than the promises. Billy was many things. Passionate. Driven. Addicted to the edge. But trustworthy? That was still up for debate. He told her she was safe. That everything was under control. That Victor Newman was just a ghost in his rearview mirror. But Sally's gut, sharp and finely tuned by heartbreak, screamed otherwise. She had learned long ago that when a man told you he had it all under control, it usually meant he was already spiraling. And yet, she stayed. Why? Because part of her wanted to believe. Not in Billy. But in the possibility that maybe, for once, this chaos she was standing in might actually lead to something real. Or maybe it was just the thrill of the gamble. After all, she had never been one to shy away from a high-stakes game. Meanwhile, across town, a different game was unraveling entirely. Holden was pacing, restless, biting the inside of his cheek like a man holding onto a powder keg of information. The secret was gnawing at him. About Audra. A secret he wasn't supposed to know, something buried so deep that even she might not be aware he had it. And now, he needed to tell someone. Not because it was noble. but because secrets, when kept too long, begin to rot the soul. Claire. Claire was the answer. She wasn't just someone he trusted, she was someone who deserved to know. Maybe because she was too smart to be blindsided, maybe because Holden wanted her to owe him. Or maybe, just maybe, because it was the one piece of leverage he held in a city where everyone else played with loaded dice. Telling Claire would change everything. It wouldn't just fracture Audra's carefully cultivated facade, it would tip the balance. But Holden was past the point of caution. He didn't want to watch from the sidelines anymore. And while Holden prepared to drop his bomb, Diane was sharpening her blades. Whatever doubts she once harbored were now gone. She was no longer the woman trying to navigate two sides of a battlefield, she had chosen her place, and it was beside Jack. This wasn't just about love. This was war. Victor Newman had made one too many moves against their family, their company, their dignity. And Diane, for all her softness in recent months, was a woman who thrived when underestimated. She had spent years in the shadows, learning how to survive, manipulate, and endure. And now, she had Jack's strategy and her own cunning. Together, they weren't just reactive, they were planning a full offensive. And the plan? It was bigger than revenge. It wasn't just about pushing back against Victor. It was about taking down Newman Enterprises. The thought had started as a whisper, but now it roared in the backrooms of Jabot. What if they didn't just defend themselves? What if they expanded? What if they built something stronger, smarter, without the shackles of Victor's tyranny looming over the business world? To do that, they needed allies. People inside. People who had nothing left to lose. Enter Adam. The Newman son who had never quite fit in. The black sheep. The prodigal son who always found himself pushed away just when he thought he was being welcomed back. His loyalty to Victor had always been conditional, circumstantial, emotional, but never permanent. Jack had known Adam for years. He'd seen the cracks. And Diane? She knew how to widen them. If they could get Adam to flip, even partially, it would be a seismic shift. But it wasn't just Adam on their radar. There was Nate. Still licking his wounds, nursing his pride after being ousted from the inner circle of Newman power. A man once trusted and now discarded. A man with ambition and bitterness to match. Jack saw the potential. Diane saw the leverage. Together, they knew, a man like Nate was either a future threat or a current asset. It would all depend on who got to him first. And while all this simmered in boardrooms and whispered conversations, Phyllis was on her own warpath. Still furious over Amanda's betrayal, still reeling from being shut out by Aristotle Dumas, she was now determined to crack the code herself. If Amanda wouldn't play ball, then Phyllis would find her own way into the mystery. She didn't need permission. She needed access. And once she had it, there would be hell to pay. Because if there was one thing Genoa City had learned time and again, it was this: never underestimate Phyllis Summers. She would smile to your face while planning your downfall behind your back. She didn't just burn bridges, she rebuilt them just to watch them collapse again. And now, with Amanda's unexpected alliance, with Sally in danger of being dragged into Billy's chaos, with Diane and Jack mounting a corporate coup, and with Holden on the verge of detonating a secret that could splinter alliances, Genoa City wasn't just a town of secrets anymore. It was a minefield. One wrong step, one misplaced confession, one act of misplaced trust, and it would all explode. And in the center of it all stood Victor Newman. Watching. Calculating. Waiting. Because if Jack and Diane thought they could outmaneuver the great Victor Newman, they'd better be ready for the counterstrike. And if Adam or Nate wavered, they'd better choose their sides carefully, because in this city, you only get to betray Victor Newman once. Would you like the next scene to be Claire confronting Audra after Holden's reveal, or Adam's secret meeting with Diane and Jack? Or perhaps Sally finally realizing Billy has lied to her, again, and confronting him just as Victor moves to strike? Absolutely. Here is a richly developed, emotionally intense, and dramatically explosive continuation of the storyline, pulling in Phyllis, Diane, Jack, Tucker, and of course Victor Newman, each playing their own twisted game. This narrative builds tension, weaves in alliances and betrayals, and culminates in a gathering storm that threatens to shatter Genoa City. The writing is continuous, immersive, and layered with soap opera logic and emotional stakes, exactly how The Young and the Restless would deliver it. They say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But in Genoa City, it's never quite that simple. Especially when the enemy wears designer suits, commands billion-dollar empires, and answers to the name Victor Newman. Jack Abbott had made peace with many things in his life, his aging father, his restless heart, even his own past betrayals. But Victor? That was a different story. That was a war that never truly ended. And now, with Diane by his side, more calculating and unapologetic than ever, the war was about to escalate in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just business. Not anymore. This was personal. Diane had always been underestimated. Once the pariah of Genoa City, she had returned, not to seek redemption, but to reclaim power. She had been the whisper behind Jack's throne long enough. Now, she stood beside him, strategizing like a general on the battlefield. But she also knew one thing: Jack was too noble to admit out loud. If they wanted to defeat Victor Newman, really defeat him, they would have to go to war in the dirt. This wasn't just about controlling Jabot or fending off Victor's endless schemes. This was about neutralizing a threat that had plagued their lives for decades. It was about legacy, survival, and vindication. Diane was prepared to play dirty. Jack, for all his old-world principles, was finally starting to see the value in that. And then there was Phyllis. Oh, Phyllis. The woman was chaos incarnate, volatile, brilliant, and dangerous in the most unpredictable ways. She and Diane had traded blows, both literal and emotional, over the years, and they'd never quite made peace. But even Diane could see that in this moment, this strategic tipping point, they might just have a mutual interest worth preserving. Because if Diane had the strategy and Jack had the credibility, Phyllis had something even more valuable: access. Access to people. To information. To secrets. And in Genoa City, secrets were currency. Phyllis may not have trusted Diane, but she despised Victor more. And when it came to picking sides, there was a certain kind of satisfaction in choosing chaos. Especially when Amanda had turned her back, and when Dumas had ghosted her. Phyllis needed a win. And aligning, temporarily, conditionally, begrudgingly, with Diane and Jack might just be the key to securing it. Of course, alliances like that don't form over brunch. But as they say, pressure creates diamonds, or detonates explosives. Elsewhere, watching from the wings, Tucker McCall couldn't help but enjoy the mess from a distance. The man had a taste for mayhem, and Genoa City had always been his favorite playground. He'd return, stir the pot, and vanish before the fallout settled. But this time, something was different. He sensed vulnerability in the air. The careful balance between titans like Jack and Victor was cracking. And where there was a crack, Tucker saw opportunity. He didn't need to take a side. Not yet. He just needed to insert himself enough. Enough to listen. Enough to provoke. Enough to push one domino and let the rest fall on their own. So what if he whispered in Diane's ear? So what if he hinted to Phyllis that Amanda's ties to Aristotle Dumas ran deeper than legal counsel? So what if he offered to fund a quiet third-party takeover bid of a Newman subsidiary just to see who would scramble to stop it? Tucker didn't need to win the war. He just wanted front-row seats when the castle burned. And yet, at the eye of this storm stood Victor Newman. Unshaken. Unmoved. Because Victor had seen all of this before. The scheming. The alliances. The betrayals. The underestimation. He had survived corporate coups, disloyal children, manipulative wives, and vendetta-driven rivals. He had built Newman Enterprises from the ground up with blood, grit, and more than a few bodies left in his wake. He didn't flinch when Jack Abbott's name was whispered in corners. He didn't blink when Diane's sudden resurgence became more aggressive. And he laughed when he heard whispers that Phyllis was sniffing around. Because if they thought this was the first time someone had tried to topple him, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Victor had a file on every one of them. He had spies inside Jabot. Eyes in Newman Media. Ears in the Grand Phoenix. He knew about the secret meetings. About the plan to erode public confidence. About the not-so-subtle campaign to paint him as an unstable relic of a bygone era. And he knew how to answer it. He always did. But here's the real question, the one no one's asking out loud, the one that keeps Diane pacing at night and Jack double-checking every phone line. How far are they really willing to go? Are they willing to torch Victor's reputation in the press? Are they prepared to unearth secrets from decades ago? Affairs, deals, betrayals long buried under loyalty oaths and sealed settlements? Would they leak proof of Victor's manipulations of public companies? Would they use Adam's resentment as leverage? Would they recruit Nate, bitter and exiled, into an inner circle built on revenge? Would they tear down Newman Enterprises, not just Victor, but the entire legacy, to make their point? Because if they are, then Genoa City is on the verge of collapse. Jack and Diane as a duo is already dangerous. Add Phyllis? Add Tucker? Stir in Nate and Adam, two wild cards with fractured loyalty? That's not just a power play. That's a revolution. And revolutions don't end in handshakes. They end in ruins. Victor knows this. Which is why he's already 10 steps ahead. He's not just planning to defend Newman Enterprises, he's preparing to redefine it. To rebuild it stronger, leaner, meaner. And to remind everyone what happens when you go to war with the mustache. So if Jack thinks this is just another Abbott tantrum? If Diane thinks this is her moment to rewrite history? If Phyllis thinks she can ride the chaos into power? They'd all better think again. Because the war is here. And in Genoa City, only one king walks away standing.